After revealing itself to the world, the next great threat to Wakanda might come from another secret empire and their ultimate frenemy from the deep, Namor. Wakanda and Atlantis have had a rough relationship since they first met, and in that time it hasn't really gotten better. With Kevin Feige himself being a big Namor fan, it's only a matter of time that Namor joins the MCU. And it might be in the second Black Panther movie that we get to see Marvel's ruler of the deep as the villain. It turns out that Wakanda and Namor have a bit of a history. When it comes right down to it, Wakanda and Atlantis aren't really all that different. Both of them are technologically advanced societies. Both of them have decided to hide themselves away from the rest of the world to protect their technology. Both of them have pretty good reasons to distrust the rest of the world, but also have to deal with having sat out some major events when their technology could have made the difference. But it's those similarities that make them not only so different, but often at odds. And it's this long rivalry that could end up playing out on the big screen when Black Panther 2 hits theaters. The tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman has actually made this clash all the more likely, with the mantle of Black Panther most likely passing to T'Challa's sister Shuri as it did in the comics. The Namor connection to Wakanda goes deep. Before there even was a Namor, there was a Namor's dad. I mean, naturally. Leonard Mackenzie was a surface dweller who had been sent to the Antarctic to find vibranium. Naturally, he was way off. He didn't find any vibranium, but he did find Princess Fen, and it was love at first sight. Love works pretty quick in comic books, unless you're Namor and Sue Richards, but that's a different video. Mackenzie and Fenn's love was short-lived when Fenn's father sent Atlantean troops to retrieve the princess. It was long enough for her to give birth to their child, however, and that was Namor, eventual ruler of Atlantis. A ruler that didn't have a big trust for the surface dwellers despite his surface dweller daddy. That wasn't helped by encountering German divers during World War II, which started Namor's pattern of on-again, off-again ally of the good guys. This ambiguity over who is the good guy and who's the bad guy is at the core of what brings Namor and Wakanda into conflict. From Namor's point of view, the people who live on land are pretty much a threat to the deep regardless of what other fights are going on. It doesn't matter if you call yourself a superhero or a supervillain. What matters is how whatever it is they're doing affects the oceans, and by extension, Atlantis. That means when the invaders are fighting the Germans in World War II and the Germans are threatening Atlantis, Namor would fight with the invaders. If a group of supervillains wants to get together and it looks like they're the best chance to protect Atlantis, Namor would be willing to join up, even when he's not a joiner. As one of the oldest and longest-running characters, Namor has in turns refused to join the Avengers, joined the Avengers, and tried to kill the Avengers. He's a complicated man. The real animosity, though, starts when Namor joined the non-team team of the Defenders. Like most conflicts with Wakanda, it all comes down to vibranium. This time, instead of Namor's pops, it's Atlantean soldiers trying to get their hands on some of that sweet vibrating metal with those amazing properties. As we all know, Wakanda views that kind of behavior as a big no-no and took the Atlantean soldiers as prisoners. One thing leads to another, Bruce Banner's involved, he gets real mad, and things happen. An angry Hulk is responsible for some serious Atlantis smashing, and then also triggers Wakanda into thinking that they're being attacked. It was a big mess that played out in Defenders number 84. The issue was resolved peacefully, but neither side left the situation with a big ol' heap and helping of trust for the other. Later, when the Avengers and the X-Men decided fighting teams of bad guys was boring and decided to fight each other, Namor sided with his other people. Not only is Namor a powerful Atlantean, but he is also a mutant. You gotta have mutant powers to pull off a pair of trunks like those. The Black Panther sided with his teammates, putting Wakanda and Atlantis on opposite sides. While the X-Men and the Avengers might acknowledge even while they're fighting that the other side is ultimately the good guys, once you get Namor involved, you're getting someone who's all in. So when the Black Panther decides to let the Avengers use Wakanda as a home base, Namor sent a tidal wave to wipe out the entire country. Like we said, he goes all in. Getting hit by a tidal wave when you're a Central African country is something that can really stick with you, and it doesn't matter how often that person fought on the side of the good guys. You'll always be that jerk that tried to drown your entire country. So here's the thing with multiverses. Sure, they free up creators to tell different kinds of stories that wouldn't be possible with the crushing weight of continuity that tracks all the way back to 1962. Enter the multiverse and parallel universes, and all sorts of different stories can take place. Even better, you can always use those alternate timelines to adjust the main one and keep it fresh and moving. Problem is, of course, that each new alternative reality and timeline you create starts to create its own continuity that has its own weight. So the same comics that created the multiverse created a way to clean up the various multiverses. An event that makes them collide or gets destroyed or has them torn apart and put back together completely different. Whether it's incursions, a crisis, or a secret war, the multiverses come into conflict and some storylines are combined or put to bed or whatever is needed to clean up the multiverse. These kinds of incursions set things in motion for the Time Runs Out event. In brief, it saw the Illuminati and the Cabal in conflict, as well as a new set of Avengers and the old set, while various other realities and Earths threatened to destroy the main Marvel timeline. The relevant part in this: Namor was in both the Illuminati and the Cabal, and Queen Shuri was not ready to let the whole attack my home country with a tidal wave thing go. Generally speaking, conflict with Atlantis comes as a direct result of Namor being a jerk to somebody. But in this case, Namor tried to prevent the war by asking T'Challa to talk to his sister. Well, that didn't work out, and Wakanda invaded Atlantis while Namor was out dealing with the multiverse. Maybe at this point, one could call it even. In this case, that one would not be Namor. With all of this being a prelude to the Infinity event, Namor told the Black Order that there was an Infinity Gem hidden in Wakanda, causing Thanos to attack said Wakanda. All of this to say Wakanda and Atlantis have a rich history of not liking each other. But how can all of this play out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Obviously, we don't know for sure, but we can put together some pieces. Here's how the two nations might end up in conflict on the big screen. We can start at the end and not the beginning. In the MCU, Thanos has done his thing. He came to Earth, he even invaded Wakanda and grabbed that Mind Stone from Vision's noggin, and then proceeded to snap out half of everything. Since the Black Order seemed to have no problem showing up where there was an Infinity Stone, Thanos doesn't really need a Namor to hip him to the location of Visions and Mind Stones. In the MCU, Atlantis is still doing the hiding thing, and Wakanda has only just introduced itself to the world. There's no reason to think, however, that they haven't already met. Not that there's a convention of secret societies hiding under everyone's noses or anything. If Attilan, the inhuman city on the moon, hosts, then the Wakandans and Atlanteans have to find a way to get to the moon without everybody noticing, and Black Bolt isn't exactly a conversationalist. But some of Atlantis and Wakanda's history may have already played out. We know that vibranium has gotten out into the world, and that is largely because of Ulysses Klaue with the help of N'Jobu, who wanted to use the amazing metal to help the people he felt Wakanda had let down. But we also know that's not the only vibranium to make it out of Wakanda. Klaue was at the top of Wakanda's most wanted list because he had gotten away with stealing some of Wakanda's vibranium. Mackenzie, Namor's father, might not have been on that last, also because the Atlanteans had already taken care of the Mackenzie problem. What they didn't know is that Mackenzie had talked to his Atlantean princess bride about this wonder metal vibranium, and she of course passes those stories down to her son Namor. Thanos comes to town and Namor decides, like he often does, that this is a surface problem, and if Thanos wants to wipe out the people on the surface, well, that's just fine with him. Only problem, of course, is that Thanos wanted half of everything to die, even those under the sea. During the blip, the Atlanteans decide they needed to up their protections and involvement. They're not exactly going to announce themselves to the world, but their plans might involve getting a hold of some of that magical metal. A Wakanda without T'Challa or Shuri, who is licking its wounds after being the battleground for half of all existence, becomes a little vulnerable to outside excursions. So Namor sees his opportunity and tries to get some of that sweet, sweet vibration-absorbing metal. What the Atlanteans don't account for is Okoye being in charge. Okoye takes her role and oath to Wakanda and the throne very seriously. If you take some vibranium while the head of the Dora Milaje is running the country, there will be consequences. Perhaps an attack on Atlantis that lets them know that Wakanda is not open for attackers. It might even be an attack that registers as a seismic event under the ocean. You might even have to tell the person whose last thread she can hold on to is protecting what's left to not worry about it. That's right, we're suggesting that not only did Okoye know about the seismic event under the sea, but she caused the seismic event under the sea as a form of retaliation against Atlantis, and then told Black Widow it was just nothing. And that is not a lie Okoye would take lightly. She's not just protecting the conflict from Natasha, something that she surely wouldn't approve of, but she was also trying to protect the secret of Atlantis. Animosity between the nations is one thing, but keeping each other's secrets is vital. Revealing your enemy's secrets means that they will ultimately reveal yours, so it's in their best interest to keep mum about each other when it comes to the outside world. Even though Wakanda has joined the world, it can still respect that line and attack Atlantis. Namor comes back after being snapped out to realize that his homeland has been invaded by Wakanda, and decides, secret or no secret, this will not stand. Namor's retaliation on Wakanda puts him on the new Black Panther's to-do list, just as the fabric between realities has started to erode thanks to Wanda and Doctor Strange's shenanigans, attracting Morlun and the Spider-Verse and all sorts of other problems that threaten the Earth and therefore Atlantis. This means that Namor now has to try and sell himself as a good guy to a very annoyed Black Panther. While this would mean that the movie would end with Namor teaming up with the Black Panther, it could also end with Namor joining the MCU's version of the Cabal, because Namor wouldn't be Namor without some ambiguity. Well, that's the history of Wakanda and Atlantis, and what it just might mean for the two secretive nations in the MCU. What do you think will cause the conflict between the two secretive worlds? Let us know in those beautiful little comments, and while you're there, be sure to subscribe to CBR for the latest videos in your inbox. As always, thanks a lot for watching.